Today I have Sue Frederick, Master Numerologist, here to talk to us all about the rest of this 8-year and what to expect in 2025, a 9-year and year of endings. Why does this year of transformation feel so painful? And what does a year of endings mean? If you want to leave me a message that might be shared on a future episode of The Dead Life in my Love Me, Love Me Not relationship segment, leave it at 802-DEAD-811. That's 802-332-3811. You can follow me on Instagram at Medium Allison, on my Facebook fan page, and you could binge on my YouTube videos to watch readings, including episodes of The Dead Life. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you want to book a reading with me, go to AllisonDubois.com or email us at booking@AllisonDubois.com. Welcome back, Sue.
Hey, it's such a pleasure to be here with you, Allison, especially because I just got to meet you in person recently.
I know, that was so nice at the Helping Parents Heal conference, which was a little bit heavy because of the subject of the people and what they'd been through, but it was strangely beautiful too. So I was glad to be there and to get to meet you in person. And Jacob Cooper, who we had lunch with as well.
Yes.
Nice guy.
He's such a sweetheart.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was all great.
Well, it was great. It was interesting, though. Along with this 8-year of transformation, I knew I had to be there. It was just like a feeling I had this year, and I've never gone. And my cousin Jerry was supposed to be there, and he ended up dying 2 or 3 days before the conference. So I felt like I needed to go to represent both of us there. So I definitely saw him there and felt him there. And that was reaffirming to me of his presence, which was really nice. But it was just the irony. And, you know, I talked to Tom McMullen about astrology, and he's like, don't be so dark with transformation. You know, it can be of evolution and finding your calling or finding the relationship, which is all true. But I think a lot of people out there are seeing the side that I look at, which is death can be part of transformation. And there are a lot of passings being posted right now on my social media anyways. So have you found that to be true? Is it at the end of an 8-year that it gets more intense with the darker stuff, or is it just spread out?
Well, I consider death to be graduation.
Yeah, I like that.
So, I mean, when my departed loved ones cross, I try not to say this in front of their loved ones, but that soul completed their plan and they got to graduate and go home, you know? And that's a lesson that we don't really learn until we've experienced it with the loss of our own loved ones. And then we're hearing from them all the time, and they're telling us they're doing great and that we're the ones here struggling, you know?
Well, they always tell me that we're the dead ones, that they're more alive than we are. So I kind of like to remember that, and they're not wrong.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
It's a good way to think of death as more of an evolution, but that's a hard thing to tell the parents who have lost a child, or some of the most painful of passings. You know, some tend to be a little more intense than others. Losing grandma at 93 isn't the same energy that losing a 12-year-old daughter would be.
Absolutely.
So, but the evolution is just intensifying, leading up to a 9-year, which you're going to educate us about too. But first, can you tell us how this 8-year, does this feel on course for you for an 8-year as to what you've been seeing happening?
Well, you know, what it feels like to me is that when we first talked about 2024, we talked about that interplay between free will and destiny, right? Mm-hmm. So you have the power number of the 8 with human free will interacting. So I've really watched these vacillations in possibilities that could have unfolded and that didn't. And what role did free will play in that, you know? And I think that's been fascinating to watch this year. And here we now still moving into the ending of 2024. And I found this really interesting pattern, Allison, where in when we look at the universal months and the universal year, November and December of 2024 are one universal month and then an 11 universal month. And that gets repeated in January and February of 2025.
Hmm.
So what that means is that what's happening here in November and December, the pattern is repeated in January and February. So I was really asking, feeling into, so what does that mean? What does that look like? And I know this sounds trite because people talk about it all the time, but I do feel there'll be some kind of recount, whatever happens in the election, it's not quite over yet until March or April, and that repeating of pattern of choice is still in play in January and February. So I never expected to see or feel that, and I think it's really interesting.
It's going to be interesting because they've never actually reversed the original count. So
Right.
that would just cause, I mean, we already are in such a divided country. 50% of us don't agree with the other 50%. It's like we have different brains and we don't see things the same way. And I find it interesting that the last time that Trump won was 2016, that he actually stepped into the presidency. So he went out of an 8-year into a 9-year to start his 4 years. And it's been a full cycle now. And
Yeah.
now
And
it's the same 8-year
yeah.
going into the 9-year. So I don't know if 9 is just good for him. He was the 45th president. That's another 9. So it's going to be interesting to see how this unfolds.
But the universal cycle that is wrapping up now in 2025, the 9 year of this universal cycle, it started actually in 2017 when, his presidency began. That was a one universal year. And so as we look at that, there is a culmination happening in 2025. And it's a culmination of everything that we've worked towards, everything that we've learned. I mean, I really want to break down 2025 by the four numbers that are part of it. And for example, the 2 starts it. And we know, Allison, that 2 is about connection, cooperation, coming together. And we look at how the world's been doing with that. Not so great.
Not great.
And then we then we go to the 0, and the 0 is a potentiator in numerology. And what that means is whatever number is before or after the 0 is made stronger. And when you put 20 and then 2, you're getting a 22 merged together. And then the final number is the 5. So what that says to me is that we're being called to cooperate, called to work together. It's the huge energy of this whole cycle that we're in, and especially it's culminating in 2025. But then we have the 5 coming along, and the 5 says, be courageous, open your heart, change it all up, break it wide open. And that's the 2025 that I'm excited about. So the 9 energy, if we think of it as culmination and graduation and stepping up to a higher lesson, then we can say it's not something to be afraid of. It's really something to cherish as a pinnacle point of humanity's evolution.
Well
Does that make
said.
sense?
It makes sense. I actually I'm not afraid of 9 years because I'm an Aquarius. So I'm just like, what you
Right.
got? Like, I like a surprise from time to time, but it can also be a good thing. It could be the end of people's addictions. It could be the end of a relationship that doesn't serve you. And there's going to be a lot of ends of relationships. It could be the end of not being able to buy a house.
Yeah.
That could come. It could be the end of being single, so somebody could
Yes,
meet their person. It could be the end of not
right.
having kids, pregnancy.
And
Endings.
it can be,
It goes hand in
and
hand
it
with new
can,
beginnings, right?
right. And it can be the end of an old way of being, like being afraid or being fearful or doubting. All of that can be ending for people in 2025. And also, what it really feels to me is an ending of the old way of viewing the world and the old way of viewing humanity. And when we think of it that way, it gets so exciting. I mean, I feel like, okay, so are the ETs going to really reveal themselves? Like, what is going to be that thing?
Yeah, we got a lot of bigger problems right now. It's
Yeah,
like
right.
we got some
Right.
fires to put out around the world. Hopefully, the year of
Yep.
endings will put an end to some of the
Right.
fighting in Ukraine and the fighting against Israel and in
Mhm.
Palestine and all of what's going on. Um,
Yes.
it would be great to be able to kumbaya this, but it's just hard. After this last year, it's like, okay, it's real. It hit the fan. Here it is. We have to deal with it. And you're right,
And that's
cooperation.
that's why, yeah, and that's why we're still here on Earth as humans, limited in our scope, limited in our capacity, because we're still learning how to step up to that higher level of who we came to be. So I'm going to see it as a beautiful graduation.
I like your altruistic vision and thinking and that you see the positives. I'm concerned as a medium because I've been bringing people through for 25 years professionally. And I'm not seeing younger people that are passing come through taking selfies. I'm not seeing them sitting on TikTok. And so there's less there to pull off of them in
Mm,
readings. And I'm
mhm,
worried about that because that means that we may not be living as soulfully as we used to. So it's going to be
mhm.
interesting over the next like 10 years moving forward to see how this technology generation pans out on the other side.
Yeah.
If we have more people now on the planet than we've ever had in the totality of the history of the world in terms of people, what's hell's going to be a little crowded. I'm a little concerned. Like, move over. It's warm.
Well,
Like, I don't know what it's going to be.
one thing I like to think about with it is, AI and all these things we're talking about now that are emerging, as the quantum physicists have told us, everything here at its core is energy.
Hmm.
So nothing is matter. And so when we think about, cell phones and computers and AI in the future, in the way I read it, consciousness is being imbued into those things. Because if everything is energy at the core, I mean, you can't say, oh, well, then this phone has no awareness. I mean, it's really scary to people to say that thing or think about it. But, we talk to our cars when our cars are broken. We'll say, oh, come on, baby, you can get
Yeah.
me home,
Yeah.
And we talk to things anyway. It's like some part of us knows that. Like when our computer breaks down, we're like going, no, no, come back. And so a part of us knows that we're living in this conscious universe and that whether it's AI or cell phones or technology, it will continue, but it's going to change and it's going to be a part of how we move through our evolution here, not separate part of it.
I would say that human energy is completely different than AI and phone energy. That to me, being a medium, there's no comparison. If I put my hand on a cell phone or on a car, I don't get interactive energy unless it's driven by a human.
Yeah.
And people are giving their energy away in technology quite a lot. And it's
Yeah.
okay to some degree, but you want moderation is important here.
Right.
And it's the energy we use to focus on each other that carries the highest vibration on the other side when I bring them through. The easy ones to bring through are the ones that loved with their whole heart. They fought for people here. They showed loyalty and perseverance in their own fights in life and growth. And they come through so easily. The people that I'm starting to experience that are younger aren't connecting with people as much. They're
Mm.
connecting with technology, which does not raise their vibration, in my experience as a medium. So maybe yours is different than how I see it, but that's what I feel.
Yeah, well, I completely say go with your feelings,
Yeah.
definitely. For me, it feels like we are in the process of consciousness imbuing technology with our energy and our hearts and our souls. And even when, we work with, if I work with a lot of grieving parents,
Hmm.
and they'll say, I was thinking about my son and my cell phone called me and nobody was there. So
No doubt
spirit,
they can manipulate technology
right.
because we are electric energy, but they're a higher frequency of
Oh,
energy,
yeah.
so it's easy for them to manipulate the technology, which is
Right.
great. That
So they
you're
can change it for us, don't you think? They
I
can
th-
bring technology to a higher vibration eventually.
I think it's more of a mechanism to communicate for them. It's a means to an end to communicate with the living so that we could hear them in a physical way. But yeah, I could see where you're going with this. Maybe, it could be plugged into AI where you almost might hear some of the
Yeah,
messages or be able to have some sort of interaction or communication between you and a deceased relative, which I think
right.
they started a while ago with sort of white noise and like picking up and separating out the different audio in
Yes.
recordings. And I've picked it up. I've recorded people's voices in readings accidentally where you could hear the person that passed speaking. So I could see where it would go to that, but still the energy of the spirit driving the technology, it's just a mechanism to them.
Yeah.
It's a
Oh, of
way to
course.
communicate. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I say consciousness is imbuing our technology, I don't mean it's technology's consciousness. I mean, it's spirit filling in and pouring into our technology. So it's my departed husband, your departed child, on and on. Those are the beings who are saying, hey, they're living with technology, so let's make that a vehicle as part of our communication and our transformation. So that's how I see it.
No, I see your point. I think it's fascinating if they could get to that point. I do know from doing readings, and you would know this as well, the more somebody's brought through who's died, the less energy they have on coming through. As time passes, they get the messages out that were most important to them. And when we keep going back to the well, after a while, they're like, you're not hearing me. And they'll pull their energy back. So it just depends on, again, AI or even a cell phone, it's mechanical to them. It's a means to communicate, just like they play with electronic baby toys in the middle of the night to let us know that they're around us. They set off the chimes and the music. And I think technology is fantastic for that. I'm worried about the soul of the living person not
Yeah,
exercising
definitely.
itself in this world because they're too drained
Right.
into technology.
Right. I totally agree with that. Yeah.
So, no, it's interesting. Discuss, people, discuss.
Right. Talk to each other, look at each other,
Yes.
hug each other.
Yes, I know the real soulful connections and care, they always say those who stand for nothing will fall for anything. It's like you have to have a belief in your soul in
Yeah.
something. Those who don't believe in anything, they're nothing underneath. And that is a concern because it means you have a low frequency energy.
Yeah.
And it becomes important, even if you're somebody that practices white magic and your belief is in nature, that's fine. That's
Mhm.
an energy, but something, you have to believe in something.
Well, the frequency that lifts us up, I think, so easily is gratitude, to say, hey, I might not believe in anything, even if somebody feels that way, but I'm grateful that I'm here, that I have friends. I'm always telling people if you just need to shift your frequency, do gratitude. It's like the easiest thing. I
I
am so
agree.
grateful. I'm here talking to Allison, and the minute I say that and feel that, my energy shifts.
It's so true, and that's the same with people who are grieving and they're healing. I always
Right.
tell them the fastest way to heal the wounds are in helping other people who have similar wounds to your own to
Right.
navigate their wounds. And as soon as you dial into those people and you start caring about them, you sort of go on the journey together of healing the wounds. And And people try and find shortcuts because they don't want to feel the pain. It's like you have to go through the grief. You can't go around it. There's just no way to cheat grief.
Totally agree. And I've
Yes.
always said that our greatest pain is meant to fuel our greatest work. So, for
I
example,
agree.
my husband died when I was 29, and grief
Yes.
was my greatest pain. And now I help people connect to the other side and remember that they're a beautiful divine being who came here on purpose and understand the signs like numbers that will help us navigate here.
Yeah,
So,
I agree completely. And I think the universe, and I think this 9 years is probably going to be a catalyst for a lot of people in what's my path? Where do I belong? Who do I want in my life? Who don't I want in my life? And for me, similar to you, but different because I lost my dad. It was the natural evolution that he would go first, even though he was a younger dad. For you, that was a husband, which I'm so sorry, because especially at 29, having to deal with that on your own. Even if there are people around, you're still dealing with it on your own inside. And my dad, I had to come to an understanding that I had been reading people who lost loved ones. And although I empathized with them, I couldn't possibly understand the level of pain that they experience on a daily basis because I had never gone through it. Then go fast forward 2 years to 30 years old. Then I'm 30. My dad dies. You know, I predicted it. I tried to prevent it. I sent him to all the heart specialists. He never had heart problems, professional ballroom dancer for 50 years. And I was taught the biggest lesson of my life, which is just because I see things doesn't mean I have control. And
right.
so I had to lose my dad for two reasons. One, because everything I was saying was coming out to be true. And I was getting this sense of that I could cause movement and change things. So I was smacked down and taught a lesson, no, you can't. And then two, it was now you know how much it hurts. Every time that you tell someone who lost a parent that you feel their pain on some level or that you understand, now you really do. And
Yeah.
so I sat down the day after he died in a very raw sense of self, just tattered person on the inside. And I wrote the chapter my way for my dad that I put in my book, Don't Kiss Him Goodbye. And I wanted it to be so raw that people who just lose a parent would know I knew exactly how they felt. And so you and I had to experience that depth of pain in order to gain access to our true path.
I totally agree. I would not be who I am today if that hadn't happened to me when I was 29. So I go back to gratitude and I just say, it was at the moment, it was the most devastating thing ever.
Yeah.
But in the long run, it pushed me to grow and evolve and ask all the important questions and to study the meaning of the universe. I mean, that seems like pretty important work to do here, and I don't think we do that until we've had our hearts broken.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah.
So when you read for young widows, do you feel extra connected and moved to give them we always try to give the best possible reading, but it makes it personal when it's that
Completely.
particular scenario for you, I would think.
Absolutely. And then my best girlfriend died the year after Paul. So I had husband and then best
Quite a Saturn
girlfriend.
return you had there.
Oh man, it was my
That's a hard
awakening
one.
big time.
Oh my gosh.
So, yes, I do feel when I work with someone who's grieving their spouse, what I get such clear downloads about the purpose of it, the soul agreement, because I look at the numbers of everyone, and for example, Paul, my husband, we have he's in spirit, but we have a soul agreement of the number 9. So he was pushing me to kind of a pinnacle, a culmination of learning and to a higher understanding of life. And yet I wasn't going to be able to keep him with me. I wasn't going to be able to, change the outcome of that. And I do believe there are certain things here on earth that we can have free will over. And then there are others that are just set in stone, part of
Yes.
destiny, part of growth. And we have to figure out how to navigate those two things here.
Thank you for saying that, because people ask me about that. I will say my dad's death was literally, I'll say, set in stone. And some deaths, there are windows where they can leave, but they have some say in whether or not they want to stay and fight to survive in that body. But
It's
some
a choice
are,
point.
yes, but some are written in stone. And because they're the catalyst, and only they can bring that kind of change in us that would help us to change the world and to help
And that's
others.
especially, don't you think that's especially true when parents lose children? That's a hard exit because that's going to wake up their whole soul family. I mean, there's not a relative in that family who's not going to be devastated and seeking a different way of understanding life and love and God and everything. Grief is our greatest teacher, and I hate it, but it just so happens to get us growing and learning like nothing else. So yeah, I do really feel for grieving widows, especially young ones, and I've worked with so many people in their 20s who've lost their partner, lost their loved one. And, that I'm often grateful that it happened to me when I was 29, Allison, because I was still so open to grow and change. And I've noticed that as I work with people who are older, maybe in their 50s or 60s, and they've lost their partner, there's a part of them that's been kind of settled in and is afraid to change their understanding of grief and even feel their departed loved one with them. And it's a little bit harder to get them to open up and trust that. Whereas these younger people, they're kind of all in much quicker.
Well, I think when you're younger and lose them as well, you don't have as many memories. Your energy is still syncing with one another. When somebody's been married 30, 40, 50 years, their energy has been synced with their partner's energy for decades, where they don't know how to not feel that vibration next to them in bed or in the house, or the kiss. Like, they don't know how to not have that vibration. And I've noticed that with the younger widows and widowers, it's not that they don't hurt, and it's not that it wasn't the love of their life, but they know they have to go on. When you're older and you lose someone, they'll say, I've had all the love I need from him, and I don't want anyone else, and I'm content for the rest of my life. I'm just going to spend time with my friends and family. And I get it. So I think that synced energy that we get, you can't function when that other part of the vibration isn't there anymore. I kind of get that.
And for that reason, I'm kind of grateful that my agreement with Paul was that he was going to leave early on, because Allison, I would have been one of those people who couldn't really go on without him, because I really go deep with people and connect very deeply. And then if I had been with him 40 years and he was gone, I would be so lost.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a different kind of grief. It's because you haven't had your own life in so long, and now you're being asked to create your own life at the age of 50 or 60. And that's really hard,
I met Joe when I was 20. I married him when I was 21. If one of us goes first, at least I can speak for me. If he goes first, I'm just so done. I'm just so done.
Oh, Allison, you can't go. We need you.
I'll pass the baton eventually. It's just I'm still spry enough to carry it. But I left you with 3 versions of me. 3 daughters. They're around.
That's right. Yep, and your daughters are magnificent too.
Thank you. And thank you to my listeners for tuning in. You can catch me next Tuesday for a fresh episode of The Dead Life. I'm Allison Dubois. This is The Dead Life. And to all of my believers out there, don't stop believing.
Join us next week on The Dead Life. And don't forget to subscribe now to get notified of every new episode.